All right, this is Dr. Kevin Reese with the Peace Over Pain Clinic and author of Peace Over Pain. Beside me is also Ryan Alexander, author of Fake Diseases and the owner, operator of Wallach's Warriors. But today we have on the line, like the underground legend, the guy behind the scenes, the formulator of Youngevity, Richard Renton. Hello, Richard.
How are you guys doing today?
Hot.
Hot.
So how did you meet Dr. Wallach?
Well, we're going to have to go back a few years, that's for sure. So when Steve Wallach was 17 years old and graduated from high school, he was working at a pet store. And I and another individual went out and we were going to open up a saltwater aquarium store. And I was the money and he was the brains. That was the general idea of the scenario. Right before we opened, about a month, I realized he didn't have any brains. And so I quickly started to do an old trick I learned in the past. When you lose your best cook, what do? You go to the restaurants that have good cooks and you take one. So I went around to all the saltwater aquarium stores, at least aquarium stores that had saltwater, looking for someone that could help me, either to make him a partner or an employee. And I found this 17-year-old young gentleman who knew more about animals in general and especially fish than anybody in the region. And I basically went in there and says, I'll tell you what, I'm opening up, and it was called Ocean's Aquarium. And would you like to either be my partner or I'll pay you $1 more an hour than what you're getting here? And he was very loyal to the owner, and he went over to the owner and was talking to her. And she basically says, I've heard nothing but great things about this store opening up. They have new technology that we've never seen in the aquarium business before. And I don't blame you if you want to go over. You'll always have a job here if you want it. So he came to work for me, and that was Steve Wallach when he was 17 years old. At that time, his dad had a practice in Portland, Oregon during the week, and on weekends, it was in Cannon Beach, which is a small community on the Oregon coast. So he literally worked 7 days a week. He also had an Amway business, and he also had the, do you remember when you could buy long distance cards?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was quite often in multi-level. He had that too. So Steve really literally moved in with me because it was just easier. And his dad was always busy. He only had one child still at home after Steve, and that was Jeremiah. And so it just worked out that way. Steve and I worked together with the aquarium store. After 2 years, like most new businesses, we had to close our doors. And he followed me. I went and started to sell cars because I needed income quickly. So did he. And then he switched dealerships. And I says, if you're going to switch dealerships to this one that's much bigger, I advise him, make sure that you become friendly with the receptionist, because when someone calls and they want to talk to someone about buying a car, you want the receptionist to hopefully pass the calls on to you. That makes sense, doesn't it?
Right.
Well, that receptionist ended up being Michelle Wallach.
Mm.
And so that's how they met and got married. So I've known Steve for about 3.5 years longer than Michelle has. So that's how it happened. And we just grew the business. Dr. Wallach at that time started a multi-level business called Soaring Eagle Ventures with 2 other gentlemen. They kind of cheated him a little bit, but he was making huge commissions because all he was doing was going on the road and speaking. And about 80% of the company was theoretically underneath him because he did all the lectures, but they wouldn't make all the products that he wanted to have made. And so he was doing a lecture for Steve and I. We were also involved with that company. And he goes, I wish they would do this. I wish they'd do that. And at that time, my wife, Roxanne, turned around and says, well, Richard knows how to make all that stuff. Why don't you guys just start a company and make it? And then Doc would have all the products that he wanted. And Steve, Michelle, and Roxanne and I started a company and started to make supporting products that the multi-level would make for Doc. And we became fairly successful and competent at designing products and making products. Then as time goes on, the other company decided they didn't want Doc anymore, and they basically fired him and got rid of him. And in doing so, they also fired Steve, Michelle, myself, and Roxanne. And 3 months later, we started Youngevity.
Very cool. Ryan, do you have anything for Richard?
Well, I love hearing about the early days of the formulations before human supplements were really figured out, right? Yeah, I love hearing about the bottles exploding and everything, and the early days of figuring out how the coffee crystal technology came about, for the Tangy Tangerine, and figuring out the calcium and how the original formula is, well, all of it, but especially the original formula, why it's so much better than what was previously available. So maybe we could step back a little bit and talk about what supplements were like before, right? Why did Dr. Wallach want different formulas? What was wrong? What was the problem?
Well, so, a couple of things. Most of the formulas, and we're talking 30 to 32 years ago, were single nutrient formulas. And so when Dr. Wallach had his practice and he wanted the people to be on his 90 essential nutrients, you're almost talking about 90 different products. And he was kind of going, this is really insane. And a lot of them, you only need a microgram or two, especially in some of the minerals, to meet what your body needs. And so we went out looking for a source that was A, organic, and B, was rich with the trace minerals. And then we were able to lump 60 of them together. And so that's when we found TRC Mine, which is now Life Earth Products, and we've had our relationship with them, and that's where the trace minerals developed more. It's a humic shale deposit, and if people don't know what that is, they can go to the Mineral Mine Youngevity Mineral Mine tour and see it on YouTube. But it's basically what I would call an ancient compost pile. Billions of years old, but it didn't have enough limestone or stone on top of it to compress it into coal, or even longer, turn it into diamonds. And so it still was an organic material. It was still very porous and whatnot. And we were able to take those minerals, that humic shale, grind it up, soak it in water, and do just simple osmosis. I mean, truly, it's just simple osmosis. We control the temperature, the time, and the barometric pressure, and we can leach the minerals out of the humic shale into the water to a concentration that we desire. So that's how that all parts up. So that kind of narrowed that down, but it also became the base product of everything. And so you were talking about products blowing up in the early days and things like that. So whenever you start mixing things, I mean, if you just go back to your basic chemistry, you have chemical reactions. And so when we first started to make products like Ultimate Classic and Ultimate Tangy Tangerine, the liquid, the original ones, we were putting 100 different nutrients in there. And so, yes, we ended up having chemical reactions, and it wasn't unusual for a batch to blow up in the time of manufacturing until we developed the technology we mix this particular part, we take it to this level, we let the product rest, then we add the amino acids, let the product rest until we kind of do this thing where we could set it up where it wouldn't expand. And then we would put in a thickening agent, and depending on what time of the year it is how much of the agent we put in. If we know it's going to be 100 degrees in Texas, we don't put much thickening agent in there because we want it to stay thin so that we don't have a lot of expansion. But in the winter in Minnesota or up in Canada, that's when we start adding a little more of the agent so it stays consistent. It doesn't separate within the bottle and things like that, and we're able to have a consistent product. And that was just a trial and error situation. We were working with good chemists at the time that was manufacturing products down in Vista, California, which is north of Chula Vista, and we got to work with them. And then Doc came to me and said, shipping, and Steve, was really more Steve, shipping liquid products at 2.5 pounds a bottle is kind of insane. We got to figure out a way, A, make something more stable that can't freeze, and B, make it lighter. And so that became my job. And it took about 3 years to come up with the original Beyond Tangy Tangerine formula. And I was struggling at trying to do it because I was trying to put water in it. And then I went to a convention, and across the hallway from the convention for nutrition was a food convention. I went in there and I saw this manufacturer that was making freeze-dried food, more or less. And what he was doing is that he would put in the raw food material in a big drum. And we're talking about big drums. The one at their manufacturing facility was about 40 feet across from one side to the other. And they would spin it, and that would push all the moisture out to bring it down to about a 93% dry compound, only 3% moisture. And sorry about my phone, it'll ring twice. What happened is that as you spin, the temperature of the product would go up. And I asked him, how do you prevent the product from not getting too hot? And he says, well, we control the temperature inside. And when all of a sudden the material starts to get hotter, the drum slows down and allows it to cool. And then as it gets down to a lower temperature, then it will speed back up and it pushes all the moisture out. So I asked him if he thought it would work for nutritional products, and he says, yes, but my facility can't do that. So then I went out and found a really large private label manufacturer that has certifications up the yin yang, politely phrasing, like third-party inspections, CGMP, even really before it started and all that. And I asked them if they'd be interested in doing a joint venture with Youngevity in making the product like this. And we started out with all the fruits and vegetables, the plant-derived minerals. We actually had it in a powder state at that time. We also had amino acids and antioxidants, and we put it in this drum, and we pushed all the moisture out. And what happened is that when we mixed it in a liquid slurry, it all broke down and joined together. So if you look underneath the microscope, it wasn't like a vitamin C molecule over here and a vitamin B molecule over here and selenium down below. They actually started to bond together. And then when we removed the moisture, it became more or less a crystal. And that crystal is what the Beyond Tangy Tangerine is. And when you mix it in the water, it goes back into suspension. And so we're really excited about that. I think we were literally the first ones on the market that ever came out with a product like this. And we've now in our third generation, and we're actually working on a fourth generation product and a lot of products that spin off. But, it's just coming up with new ideas. You're faced with a challenge, and how do you overcome the challenge? And it's just like anything in the nutritional field. We learn new things about nutrition and how they can be beneficial to your body, and how can we take advantage of it. And I see you have some, that looks like 2.0. It might be 2.5 though.
Yeah, this is 2.5. And so what made you guys go with Tangerine, something orange?
So the flavoring aspects are always controlled by Steve and Michelle Wallach. And we knew with the liquids that had a really strong taste, like Ultimate Classic, that when you mixed it with citric acid juices, whether it be orange juice or grapefruit or any of those type juices, it was more palatable. And so I think that the initial wave to take them into a orange base or tangerine based liquid came about because of that. I want to say about 5 years ago at a convention, we came out with 2 alternative flavors, one being a wild berry, and the other one, to be honest with you, I don't remember what it was, and had everyone at the convention taste it, and we all rated it and which one's best. And the 2 new flavors are really 50-50. You can never make a perfect flavor for everybody, but not by far, but 60% of the people still like the original. So we've always kind of stayed with that lemon lime. And then we wanted to match up with the osteo, something that would compare with the lemon lime without conflicting with it. And we realized that pineapple and coconut would, with a little bit of vanilla, would match that. And some people think it's great. Now, you're talking about me, and we're having an open conversation. I'm European based. I don't like sweet things. I think that some of our products are too sweet, but I don't get to make that decision. So we'll live with that. But I do know how to make things sour or not as sweet, and that's by putting bitter things in it. So I become very good with that. And so if you have a client or a patient or someone that's listening to this podcast and it's too sweet for you, go get some Bartender's Bitter. That's probably the easiest way. and you just put a dash of that in there and it'll take it out. Or if you have some bitter food, blend some bitter food in it, and that will take the sweetness out. Many years ago when I was going to college, I was cooking to pay for college, and I learned how to control my sour, sweet, all those types of because every once in a while you would put too much sugar in a recipe and you go, oops, and you didn't want to throw all the food away. So you just kind of learn how to manipulate it. And
So how did BTT end up in tablet form too? Because from a protocol standpoint, that's something we may use with someone who has a significant illness because the ORAC is so high.
So there was just people out there that didn't like liquids, didn't like the powder. They wanted something they could take in a tablet form. So BTT actually was kind of an easy decision. It was a spinoff of 2.0. So it doesn't have all the fruits and vegetables that are in 1.0. It has more of the mushrooms in it. But the one thing that it's low at is trace minerals. It doesn't have nearly the amount of trace minerals. I want to say it has 50 milligrams versus the powders are 300 versus the liquids are 600. And so whenever I get someone that wants to use the BTT tablets as a Mighty 90, I tell them also get the mineral caps. And one mineral cap equals 1 fluid ounce of the plant-derived minerals, or 600 milligrams. And then those two put together equals what you're getting pretty close with the powder. And it's a good combination to get all 90 nutrients. Do I still recommend you take more calcium and add the osteo to it, or maybe King Calcium or one of the other calcium products we have? Yes, but it's a good combination. You know, nutrition, when you work with quality, ends up costing a little bit. And so, you know, part of our jobs is to find combinations that people can afford, because to really give a nutritional product a chance, you need to give it 3 months. And if they can't afford it after the first month and quit, they'll turn around and say it doesn't work when they really haven't given it a chance in the first place. And so I always try to match up people's pocketbook with the best combination of nutritional products to help them.
Ryan?
Yeah, so I've got a couple questions here to start off with, but let me say that I was at that convention, the one you're talking about 5 years ago or whatever, 4 years ago, 6 years ago, I don't remember. But those two new flavors were amazing. I was super pumped because they were more like juices. And one of the only complaints that we actually get with Tangy Tangerine, the original or 2.0, is that it's too tangy, right? But as you said, the tanginess, the acidity, that's exactly what we recommend for people to take down the astringency of the plant-derived minerals. So if you put the plant-derived minerals in orange juice, it's now less astringent, or it doesn't feel like it. And same with the Ultimate Classic. Obviously, of course, it's a very strong taste, very good value, but it doesn't taste as good as a Tangy Tangerine. But you add something acidic, grapefruit juice, lemon juice, orange juice, and it really, really completely transforms that taste. But yeah, I love the juice flavors. And I think with 2.5, you returned a little bit more to the juicy flavor, even though it's a lot more earthy with the beet powder. Like you said, it's just different tastes, right? Some people hate the new one, the 2.5, but they love the 2.0. I know a lot of people yeah, exactly. I know a lot of people who only like the first one, you know, the original. They know what? That's it. I don't want anything else. But yeah, the juices ones were great as well. The bartender's bitter, that's a good tip. I haven't heard that before, because a couple of the products are a little bit sweet, or people say that to me, and even me, I'm like, I don't know what you mean, because there's no sugar in it, or there's no extra sugar, right? It's just fruit components. If you could comment on that, that would be great. But there's no extra sugar, and to me, they're not sweet. To me, they're tangy. So I don't really get it, but I hear what you're saying, that some people think that. So the bartender's bitter, that's a good tip. And I was going to say that our first question here, you could pick up on that immediately if you want to cut me off, but Dr. Reese asked me to come up with some questions. And really, the only two questions that we really, really get often or objections to the formulas just by reading the label. And of course, the label doesn't tell the whole story, which I'd be happy for you to talk about labels a little bit. But people have a problem with citric acid, because there's all these memes floating around there that citric acid is made from mold in the supplement business. So people say, what is this citric acid? I thought we weren't supposed to have citric acid. And I'm saying, well, citric acid's in citric fruit, but you could comment. And natural flavors. Funny, before going on Instagram, where everybody's a health researcher, before going on Instagram, people only had a problem with artificial flavors. But we know that companies can hide things. They can hide weird ingredients or questionable ingredients under the banner of natural ingredients, natural flavors. Now, I trust Youngevity. I trust you, Richard Renton. You might not even recognize me, but I've been to several of your talks. I trust the company to do their best and with the best quality, and not to put junk in the products, right? I know there's certain times that we have to put preservatives in, such as the flavored minerals. We put sugar in it, like we put the juice in it. Basically, now it needs a preservative, whereas the original one didn't. But I trust that the natural flavors are in fact natural, and I would love for you to expand on some of these things.
Okay, so let's kind of go after this. So the FDA controls the guideline of a dietary supplement label, which is called a supplement fact panel, and food labels, which they call nutritional panels. The book, if you're familiar with Rare Earth, the Forbidden Cures, that the FDA guideline for labeling is the size of that book. And so the first thing that's amusing to me is that we have gone and challenged them on some of their interpretations, especially what they have to do with our formulas. And they're the ones that come out that says that I would love to put that Beyond Tangy Tangerine's flavors are natural orange extract, natural tangerine extract, and a little bit of lemon extract. But they say, no, you have to call it natural extracts. Now, in the supplement business, natural extracts actually are usually fruit extracts. But if you get a food and you call it a natural flavoring, it can actually be MSG. Not in dietary supplements, but in foods. So they're not consistent between the two. It'd be a lot easier if they were. If we were to put MSG in a dietary supplement, which if people don't know what it is, it's a chemical that increases the size of your taste buds in your mouth and therefore makes your food taste better, but it's not too good for your body. The Chinese food restaurant business is kind of famous for MSG. But if we were to put MSG in a dietary supplement, we would actually have to put it down there listed as MSG in the ingredients. So you can't do that. So the FDA kind of tells us what to do and what we can't do as far as that goes. And you, on your other part that you were saying, if we have products in there that are natural and they have sugar in there, they're going to grow bacteria if you give them an opportunity. And so with especially the liquids, it's kind of like milk, but I'm 67. When I was young, we drank milk. Milk only had a 1 week shelf life. Now it has a 1.5 month shelf life. I don't want to know what they do to milk to do that, but they've somehow extended that out. But I can tell you that if we didn't put anything in classic, it would be bad within a week. And so we had to make a choice. And so we use citric acid is the most common one. We get ours from orange peel. Yes, you can make it out of mold. I would never do that, but any citric acid peel or actually citric acid juice, you can make citric acid out of, and it's really about a 2-step process. So I can even call it natural because it isn't that hard to do it chemically wise. And it helps control the pH. So we want the product to be a little acidic, because if it gets to 7 to 7.4, it likes to grow bacteria like a bean, especially if it starts to get warm. And so there's that. Then there's what's called yeast and mold. And citric acid really doesn't kill yeast and mold. We have to use something else. And so there's potassium sorbate and sodium benzenate, which in low amounts is really, really safe. People have concerned about sodium benzenate because they've heard things that it's a carcinogenic. It is not a carcinogenic, but benzene is. And the ingredients of benzene is sodium benzenate, citric acid, CO2, and time and temperature. And Coca-Cola found that out the hard way because in Coca-Cola, there's vitamin C. It's a carbonated beverage. over time, they had it in there, and all of a sudden they started to realize the product had benzene in it, which caused some cancer in people. But if you're missing one of those things, for example, carbonated beverage, if you notice, really none of our products are carbonated at all. It can't turn into benzene. It just can't, but it can kill mold. And then, and so we use it in the small amount. And so one of the things that we decided a long time ago, instead of putting a large amount of any one preservative, we put smaller amounts to target the problems at the least amount, and then keep the shelf life on the real sensitive products to a shorter window. And so, for example, Classic, we typically put an 18-month shelf life on it. And the tablets, we usually put a 3-year shelf life on it, because tablets don't go bad nearly as quickly, especially if you keep them dry. If you let them get damp and you let moisture get inside that jar, then we can have a problem. But, you know, in all fairness, that's why we do it. So we shorten the shelf life, put in less preservatives, and so that we can have a quality product that lasts a little bit. The other key thing that I always point out is there's a lot of MLMs out there that people end up with garage full of products. And since day one, Dr. Wallach and Steve Wallach didn't want that, because we can't control the quality nearly as effectively when it's in all of our garages, because it could be over 100 degrees in our garage. It can be below freezing in our garage. You know, you don't know how long it's been sitting there and those types of things. And so that's why Youngevity has about 4 key warehouses across the United States. And then we have some international ones. We do that to control the product, to make sure that we're able to give fresh product out there as much as possible. There again, I apologize about that. People will always try to call me. Did that answer your preservative questions?
I think that was really great. That was another one of the questions, you know, talk about the preservatives themselves. And I know that the quantities are very low, and that if you actually read the studies, if they're saying that, you know, this and that is giving tumors to rats and whatnot, you know, they're injecting massive amounts into these animals. Those animals also don't live very long, you know. So if the effect, if the biological effect doesn't show up in 2 years, then you got no study, basically. So they inject them, or they give them enough of the substance so that they get the bad result they're looking for within a year or two, which obviously is not mimicking what's happening in human beings at all. So
I'm going to toss one other quick thing in there. It's since you talk about studies, so it's always interesting to read studies. But the first thing I do before I really read the study, I kind of read the synopsis of it to get the idea. But then I find out, where do they get the money to do the study?
Yeah, yeah.
You know, you're
Right
laughing
on.
at that, because, you know, there's a lot of organizations out there that want a particular answer to come out of their study, and so they'll frame the study to match this outcome that they want. And so if you kind of know that it's the C&H sugar that's sponsoring the study, and they're saying sugar isn't as bad as we say it is, you kind of can question the results. And then it can go the other way too. We had our Classic studied by, and our BTT 1.0 studied by Clemson on its ability to deal with cancer cells. And the graduate students did some great studies. They published it. They eventually pulled it off, and it was probably because we didn't train our customers as well, because all our customers were calling University of Clemson and asking them questions on what it would do in the human body and all that. And they weren't expecting those hundreds of calls to come into their chemistry department for that. So they kind of asked us to pull back, because the study's still out there. You can find it, but those types of things. So when you read studies, or you read what's on the internet, you have to kind of look where the source is coming from, and look to see if the answer that they're given is skewed by the company that's putting it out.
Yeah, my studies are results I get with clients. That's my studies. Ryan, I'll come to you in a second, but Richard, I wanted to ask you, one of the challenges that I get sometimes, very rare, but somebody comes along and says, are there isolates in there? I say, are there specifically protein isolates? Some people are scared of isolates. What can you say about that?
So if you look at our whey products, the answer is yes. When you look at products like BTT, the answer is no. So we actually are very honest about what's on our label. When you get down to other ingredients, the item of the most in that list of other ingredients is always listed first. The least amount is always listed last, and it's actually put in progressive order. We don't say how many milligrams and that kind of things. And there's a few products where we kind of want to keep the results to ourselves. We're a little more selfish about it. And so we say proprietary blend just to protect. But, you know, to a certain degree, I kind of roll my eyes even on that, because if you give me a proprietary blend and you of another company's product and you give me enough time, I'll give you the formula. And so the isolates, yes, there is isolates in the whey products. And that is the one line. The other thing to keep in mind now that we have over 2,000 products is that I know the Youngevity line really well. The sister companies that have joined us over the last 4 years, my knowledge on the product isn't quite as strong with those because I didn't design them in the first place. But I would say 85% of our products won't have it at all. And there is a few out there that will, but basically it's going to be the whey products.
Gotcha.
And then the other thing too, real quickly, if someone says, I don't like this in this product, then I don't really try to coach them to change their mind, because usually it's like pounding my head against the wall and I just soon keep my head solid. But I will look for another product within our families that doesn't have that in there that will give them the benefits. So I say, okay, if you don't like this mushrooms in this, or you don't like strawberries in this, we have this product. Why don't you give that a try? And they usually go, oh, okay. Well, why you have it in the first place? And I go, it's just the formulation. And it's what, you know, the scientific board guided us to do and what Dr. Wallach wants, but we try to have options. It's also one of the reasons why we always seem to have 5 of one family type product. You know, why do we have 5 different calcium products? Why do we have BTT 1.0, 2.0, 2.5, and so on? It's just to give everyone a little variety.
I have so many questions left, actually. But one thing that we seem to have not the greatest answer on in general is carbonation. Our very basic answer is that it lowers the stomach acid or raises the pH. So the stomach acid is less strong, and you know, you need strong stomach acid and so on. But you're such a detail-oriented guy, Richard. I would love for you to give us an explanation on carbonation, why carbonation is on our list, why carbonation is not in our products, with the exception, I think, of only the Rebound in the can is carbonated, right?
And it's a light carbonation if you taste it. So carbonation does a couple of things. Yes, it raises the pH, which dilutes the acid in your stomach and makes it where you can't absorb your nutritional products as sufficiency. The other thing too is when you start having high levels of carbonation within your body and your body absorbs all that CO2, it hinders the density of your bones. And the best way to experiment, and it's really fun to do with kids, I love doing an experiment with kids, is we'll take a carbonated soda water, and then we take a carbonated juice of some sort, and we put a chicken bone in it. And we do it in the old Mason's jar. And then we take water, and we put the chicken bone in the water, and we leave it there for a week, and then we pull it out, and we look at the bones and get a feel what's going on. And the one that has higher sugar levels and higher CO2 will be very limp. You know, and you'll be able to bend it almost in a U shape. The one that's left is more stiff. The one in the water is still saturated. You can bend it a little bit, but it's pretty much still solid. And so it hinders the absorption of nutrients into your body. It raises the pH in your stomach. And if that people don't understand that, makes it alkaline. And that hinders the absorption. And it's not good for your bones.
How exactly does it raise the pH? Because people think that because like cola is acidic, they're like, well, this should actually help stomach acidity. But can you explain?
No, well, the only thing I can tell you is with CO2, you know, I have what's called a Merck index that always tells you a little bit about chemistry. It's more or less the Bible for chemists.
We're going deep now.
And this has literally, now this one's old.
Can you show it again? Can you show it again, please? Because the camera was on me.
Does that help everybody?
Yep, that's huge.
And if I open this up, it gives all the chemical compounds and everything in it. It's just like people come to me and they say, why do you have ascorbic acid in your product? And the ascorbic acid is vitamin C. without any bondings to it. In other words, you can put calcium with vitamin C. You can do a little bit so it isn't acidic. But if you look up the actual chemical formula of vitamin C in here, and you look up the chemical formula of ascorbic acid, they're absolutely identical. There is no difference in the organic chain. In fact, it actually says in the ascorbic acid, it's vitamin C, and in the vitamin C section, it says it's ascorbic acid. And, you know, I had the benefit of living in Oregon the majority of my life, and I actually got to meet Linus Pauling and got to listen about some of his lectures with vitamin C. And he's if we call Dr. Wallach the mineral doctor, we have to call Dr. Linus Pauling the vitamin C doctor, because he felt everyone should take vitamin C to bowel intolerance, which is a little stiff. You know, we look at what we have here, and that's part of the science. And then the review board on nutritional products is the other part of our science. And then with Tangy, we've had the ability to send some of our products off to universities to have some independent studies on. And so that's part of our other science. Have we spent the money to have, you know, blind taste studies and all that some people, that the pharmaceutical companies think we should do? No, because they're very expensive. But, you know, as time goes on, we may be required to do that if the pharmaceutical companies keep putting pressure on the FDA.
Could you talk a little bit about the difference between folate, methylfolate, and folic acid? And let me just say that we know that the FDA court cases that Dr. Wallach won, he won the qualified health claim for folic acid in preventing neural tube defects. And there's also a lot of people who have this MTHFR gene mutation. Let me also say that if you didn't know, Dr. Reese, Richard Renton, if you guys didn't know, lots of people just don't tell us this. You know, they come out later and they're like, oh yeah, I forgot to tell you, I have this gene mutation supposedly, but we've been giving them whatever products, you know, some of them have folate, some of them have folic acid. And I have noticed over the years, absolutely no relevance to this at all. You know, people with that gene mutation seem to be able to take both of them, whatever, as long as, I'm assuming it's because as long as the other nutrients are present, I'm assuming there's a buffer there or something. If you could go into the difference between the two, a lot of people don't like folic acid. It's a question I get all the time. To me, it's inconsequential, but I'd love to hear from you.
Sure. So folate is the natural form of B12. Folic acid can be a synthetic form, but now we get the FDA involved. I'll give you a little story on that. And so we took folate along with some other nutrients in the original 1.0 version, and we put it in the soil where plants would absorb it. And then we harvest the plants, and they had elevated levels of those particular nutrients. And then we put the plant in the product. And the FDA said, by putting it in the plant and not putting it straight in the product, you've made it synthetic. And we said, no, we didn't. And if you look, you can actually see the B12 in the plant, and it's in the form of folate. And they go, we don't care. This is our opinion. You have to go by our guidelines. And so if you read the label, it says folic acid, and then it says in the form of folate fed to these plants. And so that's how we do that. But people are concerned when you say folic acid because they assume that it is a chemically made product within a lab and has no natural form to it. And I would say in the majority of cases, that would be a true statement. As far as the gene mutation, I'm of the family of people that the healthier your gut is, the less the problems you'll have with that gene mutation. My niece and my nephew both have that, and I've worked with them on making their gut healthy. They also take 2.5, and neither one have a distinct problem with it now. We keep working at trying to help them in the long run, but it'll give you an idea. But yeah, basically, you know, people think ascorbic acid is synthetic. In our case, it's derived from corn. We actually get the corn out of Europe, so it's not GMO. So it's non-GMO corn out of Europe. And it's about a 4-step process to pull the vitamin C out of corn. You can make it out of oranges. You can make it out of anything that has vitamin C in it. And it's that 4-step process. We bring in a lot of our vitamins in from Europe, just because of their standard of control. And we don't have to be so concerned about GMO because the majority of Europe is banned Monsanto and their GMO line of products as far as grains, fruits, and vegetables.
That would be sort of along my next question. I know that we get ingredients from all over the world, and you've already stated that if you want quality, there's going to be some costs involved, right? So a lot of people are like, hey, well, I'm reading this label of this other product or this other company that claims to have all these nutrients and whatever. Why is yours twice the price? I'd love for you to expand a little bit on some of the costlier ingredients, some of the costs involved in this whole enterprise of making products with hundreds of ingredients in them. Like the original Tangy Tangerine, I believe, had 115 different plant ingredients in it. That has to be expensive to source all these different things. Obviously, we had severe supply line disruptions as well in the last couple of years, and this is why. It's because there's so many ingredients. I guess if one of these supply chains goes wrong, we've got a major disruption here for making complicated products. And I also had written down here the Pro line products, which is like what makes some of these Pro line products so much better. Like if you got something like Pro Joint FX, why is that so much better than one of our less expensive joint support supplements, for example?
I'm cheating. I'm going to look up because to answer your question quickly, I'll say because of trademarks. But I'm going to give you an example of quality. So MSM is derived, basically originally it was a byproduct of the paper in making paper from trees, but it's been purified since then. And people may have tried it and they didn't even know it, because I remember years ago, DSMO was really popular and it was almost a black market item. You go down, sneak your bottle of DSMO out, and you would smell like oysters and people would ask you if you're taking it. Well, MSM is what the active ingredient in DSMO to make it expensive, to make it beneficial. The company that really owns all the trademarks and all that's called Opti MSM, and it's based out of Vancouver, Washington, which is literally from my house, probably 8 miles away. And not to pick on them, but it costs about $28 a kilo when you get it from them with all the trademarks. It's a very pure product. It's easy to work with. You never have problems from contaminant. But on the other hand, I could bring it in from China for $3 a kilo, and that's including shipping. Go figure how they do it. But it's scary because when they turn around and say it's 75% pure, my first question is, what's the 25% that isn't? What is in there? Do you have heavy metals in there? Do you have all those problems? And so in general, we never bring anything in from China. We don't bring that much in from India. We try to get the products where we know that there's good agricultural or good pharmaceutical developments at the point of manufacturing. And because of that, it costs more. And if you look at Joint Plus, you'll see that it's got some trademark products in it. And whenever you have anything that has trademark, and the Pro line almost all have trademark products in it, you're going to pay an optimum price per kilo for the product. And we just look and see, are we going to see the beneficial to that? Turmeric in our turmeric product is probably the great example. It's 98% pure, but the big kicker is whenever you work with an herb, you quite often have high bacteria counts that no one ever really talks about. It's just naturally occurring in plants. And our turmeric product is very low in bacteria to boot. And so we like it a lot. And so it's just the sourcing out of the ingredients that we know. When Dr. Wallach first started to do this, he basically says, I don't want to come out with a product. There again, it's going to ring twice. I don't want to come out with a product that is trendy. I want to have a challenge, a health challenge, and then come out with a product that will be beneficial to the health challenge. And so
because he has the protocol mentality.
He has the protocols, and then he would say to me, I want you to have a product that will assist in shrinking an enlarged prostate. So I would go out and do all the research and come up with a formula idea, and then I would present it to him. Back in those days, it was to three of them, Dr. DeRue, Dr. Cincinnig, and Dr. Wallach. And they would all review the product and turn around and say, well, why don't you put this in? What do you think about this? And it was like a freshman in college going in front of a board to get your doctoral and have them review everything you do. You know, the first couple of times was really intimidating, you know, because I would spend, you know, days and days working on these formulas, and they would just kind of pull them all apart. You know, it taught me a lot. And it explained to me that, you know, calcium in certain situations, calcium citrate is better than calcium gluconate, and when is it better and when is it not, and you know, how do you work this, and try to stay away from calcium carbonate, because that's basically limestone, and your stomach and your acid in your stomach is never strong enough really to break it down, and all those type situations. And so it's just a combination. Can we make the product cheaper? Yes, by using cheaper ingredients. Will it work as well? Probably not. And so it's just that weighing out of, you know, we want a product that will be beneficial, and we want a product that will last, and we want a product that people will receive results from. And in doing so, it costs a little bit more. Supply side change, you can imagine, if we're bringing in our vitamins from Europe, and it has to cross the oceans, you know, we got to get it here. If it's coming from Australia, we got to get it across the oceans. Products get tied up. And when you have products that have 115 ingredients, like a Beyond Tangy Tangerine, and you're missing one, you can't make the product. And so it created a big challenge. The whole reason why 2.5 came out is that we tweaked the formula a little bit, and we had a second manufacturer making it. And the whole idea with 2.5 is when 2.0 ran out, we'd have 2.5 to fulfill the demand. And that by having two manufacturers making almost the same product, we were able to work around the supply line a little more effectively. Are we done with the supply chain problem? No, there's still trademark products that we're having trouble getting our hands on and keeping the flow going. Are we trying to work around things and keep information going? Yes. Do I think we got another year to 2 years of this problem? Probably. But, you know, we're learning on it. We're actually starting to manufacture more of our own product. We were against that in the beginning. Because when you have tablets, when you have capsules, when you have powders, when you have whey products, when you have soft gels, you know, you can find manufacturers that our specialty is making that type of a product. And when you deal with the people making that type of a product, they've had all the hiccups before, and we're able to overcome challenges faster and bring products faster to the field. So we always felt it was better rather than building our own manufacturing. But now we're starting to do a little more in-house on those types of products as well.
How about rice flour? How does that work? Because you guys do use rice flour, right?
So we bring up non-GMO brown rice from Canada.
Okay.
And so we don't use United States rice, and we make sure that it's organic and it's non-GMO. And we can take the starch fiber out of it and just use the starch fiber. That has another name that I'd rather not use because everyone always thinks it's derived from corn. It's bad for you. And so I'll leave it out. But
you talking about maltodextrin?
I didn't say that word.
Well.
But, you know,
people are scared of it, though, but they shouldn't be, right? It's just a starch.
It's just a starch. And it's, what does it derive from? Is it derived from corn within the United States? You can almost guarantee it's GMO. And so we try to stay away from that.
Right. Right. Now, what's the science behind just a capsule for just the supplement industry in general? Like,
okay, so
some people are naturalists, you know what I mean? And they're like, a capsule, why would I do that?
Okay, so there's lots of ways to make products, and a lot of people use tablets that actually have coating on it. And not to pick on a brand, but like One A Day or Centrum or those types of guys, you can take their tablets and put them in vinegar, which has a pH of about 2.3, and they won't dissolve. And your stomach pH is only 2.2, so they're relatively the same. And And so if they can't dissolve in the acid, how are you going to dissolve it to make a nutritional product? So then capsules came about, and most of the capsules initially were made from a gelatin source, which was animal, and typically it was bovine, which is beef, porcine, which is pork, or shark, or those types of things. Then technology developed it anymore, and they were able to use vegetable cellulose. So they were able to make a vegetable gel cap. Well, gel cap doesn't survive well in acid. It dissolves within typically 1 to 2 minutes. And then you can have a loose powder that hasn't been compressed in your stomach, and the acid starts mixing with that. So it starts breaking down, and you start absorbing it. Is liquid better? Yes, liquid, it's already dissolved. It breaks down very quickly, and over things like that. Some people don't like taking liquids. Are the powders, when you mix them in water, are they more beneficial? Yes. If someone's a puritist, they typically don't want to take the bovine or the porcine. We stay away from porcine because of people and their religious beliefs. And so we use bovine, which is beef. We actually bring the bovine in from Argentina, which has never had mad cow disease. And it's non-GMO. They really have great beef down in Argentina and Brazil and Japan, but we choose those countries. And we have our soft gels manufactured with that, as well as our hard shells. But it's just a way of manufacturing.
Nice.
Could you talk about liquid capsules, oil capsules?
So the soft gels?
Yeah, and I mean, we've been saying for years that ours are less likely to oxidize, or they take a lot longer to oxidize. Could you talk about that and what the industry standards are? I know they're quite low, and I know there's a lot of companies that make soft gels that only sell to physicians. So the science is known on how to make them less oxidizable, but I'd love to hear more about it.
So porcine and bovine are both much better at keeping the oxygen barrier from penetrating the soft gel. The vegetable cellulose is the least at that, and when it's exposed to the oils, will have a situation of rancid, especially if it gets hot. And so there's that challenge. So we've stayed away from, on the oils, using a vegetable cellulose glycerin combination to make that soft gel, because they just don't hold up as well. They also have a tendency to become more sticky on the outside when they're heated, and you have a greater chance, not that porcine and bovine won't do it, but you have a greater chance if they travel to Texas right now, instead of getting a 90 count, you get a great big 1 count because they've all melted together. And so there's the challenge. The other thing is that the higher quality oils you use, the less puritans are in it, and the less chance of oxidizing. So when we bring in our fish oil from Norway that is captured in cold water and is short life, it has less heavy metals, and it's a very purified form. And then we blend it with organic, non-GMO flaxseed and borage oils out of Canada. We're able to blend them, and then we use a pharmaceutical grade company that makes the soft gels for us, and then we bring them into the United States, and that's where we have our blends. Typical order of soft gels for us is in the neighborhood of 6 million at a pop. It makes it attractive for the companies to do it. We're able to bring in the oils at the price where it makes it more affordable, and we're able to get a reasonable supply. The only disadvantage is back in the old days, and we're talking pre-COVID, we would have to give our manufacturers a 3 months notice that we wanted that many. It's now close to a 1 year notice. So they have trouble getting a hold of their raw ingredients. And that's one of the big challenges we've had, is some of our our EFA products have been out of stock for a month or two, which is a scary number and something we try to avoid, and that we scramble like crazy. But our main manufacturer requires a minimum of a 9-month time to manufacture the product.
One of the products that I really enjoy and like is Immortalium. Could you speak on that?
So Immortalium is kind of a neat product, but it's hard to prove that it works. The goal of Immortalium is to support healthy telomere. Now, most people don't know what telomere is, and so the easiest way that I explain it is, you ever seen that DNA chain where it's a twisted ladder?
Yeah.
Well, that's your DNA, and on the ends, the four ends of that twist are little hard sections, and they're called telomeres. And I always tell people, DNA chains and telomeres health is kind of like shoelaces. If you took the shoelaces and you twisted them, it works great. But if you take that little plastic piece off the bottom of the shoelace, and all of a sudden the shoelace starts to come apart, well, that's where the problem with DNA is when your telomeres aren't healthy, they come apart. There was some studies done out of University of California, Berkeley, that won some Nobel Prizes, as well as in Europe. I'm not sure what the university is. And we went with them and talked to them about what nutritional products could we put together that would be beneficial in supporting health of telomeres. And they literally opened their research studies to us and said, do these vitamins at this amount of concentration and these nutrients, and you'll have a product that supports telomere health. And we did, and that's what basically Immortalium is. The only challenge is unless you have an electron microscope and can look at DNA, it's hard to show that it's actually doing its thing. We actually trusted the people that won the Nobel Prize that they knew what they were talking about as far as the nutrients and put it together. And then we can look at Zeafem and Zeatest, which has a half dose of Immortalium in there to support telomere health, and then some additional herbs and vitamins to support hormone health within the male and the female. But I'll tell you this too, and we don't talk about this product this much, is that the pollen that we use in pollen bursts, that's the fat soluble pollen that we find in the Fem product and the Prohoba Fem and Prohoba Stat for men, works almost as effectively. And it's kind of a neat thing on the pollen. You should have Adrian Gold on to talk about it as a pod. But basically, they take that fat soluble, and normally bees take pollen and they transfer it, and then we could take honey and we can pull the pollen out of the honey. But people can have allergic reactions to it due to allergies. This particular company that we take out of Scandinavia actually has a vacuum cleaner type thing, and they take the plants and they vacuum the pollen out of it. And doing so, it takes the outer husk of the pollen, because the pollen's like a nut. It's the meat inside is what we want. We don't need the husk, but the allergies typically come from the husk. And so in this process, they're able to make this product where it's just the meat only, and this fat soluble pollen is also very effective at helping men and women, men with enlarged prostates and women with hormones not being balanced in those. And those are two little products that people don't talk much about, and they really are good ones within our family.
Right.
Could you possibly comment on the pollen burst? It's one of the only products that I see that has any sort of a gluten on the label. It says like 0.04 parts per million or something like that. What's up with that? Where does that come from?
Well, it comes from the pollen. So there's two types of pollens that the pollen burst family uses. One is a water soluble pollen, and the other one's the fat soluble pollen. The water soluble pollen is found in the pollen burst drinks, and then the fat soluble is found in the daily liver cleanse, the female product and the male product, and glutathione is in a bunch of those products. Off the top of my head, I should be able to tell you which one it has it, but I can't. But we clearly put it on the label, and I like that particular ingredient for a lot of products. We also have it in our cardio sticks and a few other ones, but that's a neat product. I also like, my personal favorite is ORAC score study research. I actually worked with Connecticut and the Department of Ag when that ORAC, or oxygen radical absorption capacity, first came out. And it's one of the rare studies that we can do out there that you can compare apples to oranges, right? Because what it does is it measures the ability of a compound, any compound, from attacking free radicals within your body. So your body's going to produce free radicals. You can get it from the environment. It's basically broken oxygen bonds, and they're in your body. And what an antioxidant is able to absorb that free radical, bond to it, and your body is able to get rid of it. So people go to me and they say, isn't selenium a great antioxidant? And the answer is no. Selenium is not an antioxidant, but what selenium is a cofactor to make antioxidants effective. So is it good to put it in antioxidant products? Absolutely. But let's say we have vitamin C, which is an antioxidant, and it bonds to those and gets rid of it. But we can have vitamin C in blueberries. We can have vitamin C's or antioxidants in mushrooms, and there's 50 different ones. And I will tell you, there is no perfect antioxidant. There isn't one that does everything. So, getting combinations works very effectively. But what we're able to do is take research and compare which one of these fruits, vegetables, or compounds is the stronger antioxidant. And I can tell you, in most cases, it's spices that are great. Turmeric, for example, is a great antioxidant. A lot of the mushroom.
I've been putting clients on the Cell Shield right away now.
RTQ, resveratrol, which is a purified grapeseed extract, quercetin, and turmeric. Got to remember my initials. And so we do that. You can almost tell the name of the products and who designed the products, because I'm kind of the old-fashioned thing. I try to actually tell you what's in it or what it's good for right off the bat. And so Cell Shield RTQ, well, it protects your cell and it has RTQ in it, and so that's the easy way to spot one of my formulas, is that, ultimate calcium. What is it? It's calcium product, right? So people chuck at me. The ones that you read the label and you can't figure out at all is probably not one of my designs. But I don't get final say on that. The marketing department gets to name the products technically, but we work on that together. And so, the antioxidant products are true friends of mine. If you have a healthy gut and if you have strong antioxidants, viruses have less of effect on you. And that's probably the easiest way I can say it without getting in trouble, getting a little letter from the FDA. And so I think that most people, when they start on 90 essential nutrients, personally, I start them on the healthy digestive pack, because I want their gut to get healthy. Because if they're going to spend $100+ on nutritional products, I want them to get a bang for the buck. If their gut isn't healthy, they'll just flush right through their system. And so even spending a month on all the digestive products, whether it's the Benue pre and probiotics, whether it's Flora FX, whether it's digestive enzymes, whether it's nightly essence, and all those, and get your gut in really good shape, and then start to load it with nutritional products, the nutritional products will be more effective. If your gut isn't healthy, you're going to spend a lot of money and you're going to have really expensive urine. Right. And so it's an important factor. The gut, and another thing people don't realize, and I love this type of reading, it's really boring, it puts most people to sleep. There is more nerve paths from your gut to your brain than any other organ in your body. So your gut and your brain communicate more than your gut to your heart, or your gut to a muscle, or your gut to your eye or ear, or any of those. It's your brain to your gut. That transfer of information, there's more of it than any other spot in your body. So if Mother Nature has put us together that way, should we pay attention to health that way too? And so I'm a big proponent of making your gut healthy. And to plug another person on our team, if you haven't had Dr. Joanne Conaway on to talk about gut health and women's challenges, she'd be a great pod for you too.
So yeah, gut health is important. And I wanted to ask you this anyway, because there are a lot of gut products in the dispensary, right? Mm-hmm. Ryan just put me onto Nightly Essence. And so I've been looking into that, and I've been playing around with Cleanse FX lately too. And there's a boom with that one. and I've used Ultimate Microbiome as well. What do you recommend for what's the biggest boom for the gut?
So 4 products working in a team that I like. Nightly Essence and I-26 are the 1-2. Then you have a probiotic, which is important. And so there's one under the Preservative product. It's just 2 strains, but it's the 2 most important strains. And sometimes keep it simple works better for some people. The Ben-U is the most count wise as far as the product. And then we have Flora FX, but I want what I-26 does is kill the bad bacteria in your gut. So we have this scale on your gut, good bacteria and bad bacteria. We want obviously more good bacteria. To get more good bacteria in it, we seed it with a probiotic. To get your food broken down better, we take it with a digestive enzymes. And then we take I-26 to kill the bad bacteria. So now we have that combination. Now, Nightly Essence gets in there because we typically take the full dose at night. That doesn't really help seed your gut, but what it does do is put all those enzymes and ingredients in your bloodstream, and it starts to clean out your bloodstream. It kind of works like a liver cleanse on steroids type scenario. And so I work with those type of a probiotic, a Nightly Essence, an I-26, and a digestive enzyme. Get their gut healthy. Especially if they come to me and say, my joints hurt, I have challenges with breathing, I have gut issues, I seem to pass a lot of gas. In other words, they have hard tissue problems, they have soft tissue problems, they have gut problems, they may have health, they may have weight problems. When they have multiple areas, that's telling me their gut is not healthy. And so my goal first is to get their gut healthy before I address any of the other stuff.
You mentioned I-20.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think we have the same question here. I'm right now. I'm editing a talk that I did with Dr. Glenn Winkle, who was involved with the production and creation of I-26 20 years ago. It's fresh in my head. He's blowing my mind all over again with the I-26. And so the microbiome has the I-26 hyperimmune egg in it. That's what I-26 is, right? It's hyperimmune egg. I think it's got 26 strains of bacteria that was injected into the chicken. The chicken lays eggs that is immune to those strains of bacteria. They pass on the immunity to you, but they, like you said, they literally kill the bad pathogens that are in you with that. So when you're talking about using this combination, I've been using Nightly Essence and Microbiome. Only those 2. For a lot of people, I've been getting better results than I've ever gotten with any other digestion combination at all. So is that why? Is it because it has the I-26 and probiotics in it at the same time that we don't now need 4 things? We just need, 1 or 2?
So yes, as a maintenance level, if we're talking to someone that has a severe gut challenge, it only has a half dose of the I-26. I'd rather you get the full dose of the I-26 and as strong as a probiotic, a Nightly Essence and enzyme as we can for the people that have the challenge. Once you're over with the challenge, you just want to maintain a gut. Do I take a probiotic every single day? Yes. Do I take I-26 every single day? The answer is yes. Do I take enzymes when I have fatty meals? Absolutely. Do I take enzymes before I go to bed? Absolutely. So, people look at me and they consider me crazy with the number of pills and powders and drinks that I do, but what the hey, I make it, I can get it. But in the humor of that, but if I'm addressing a person that has a challenge, I want to correct the challenge as quickly as possible so I can get the other vitamins. So if you have success with Microbiome, Nightly Essence, and maybe an enzyme, and that's the routine you want to do, and you're getting success, and people are going to take products not because they read the label and they go, this is a great product. They're going to take it because you said it worked for me, right? And so they're going to see success. Now, can I make it faster by maybe doing it my way? Maybe in some cases, maybe not. But that is the main reason. You always remember that if you're looking at Youngevity as a business and you don't think the products are going to be have been beneficial to you in the past, you're probably not going to be a very good businessman. But if you've seen unbelievable results when you do ABC, no matter what ABC is. And you tell people, I've got numbers. They ask you, what's happened to you? And I go, well, I did ABC. And they start doing ABC. Odds on favor, they're going to see results. I mean, we make products that have results. And so you've been successful at that, and you're coaching that, and your people believe that. Yep, it's going to be beneficial. If you have someone that says, maybe it worked for me, and you go, okay, let's tweak it and do it this way and make it even stronger and see what it does for you, you can do it that way too. Microbiome was a convenience package. How can we get people taking one product instead of 3? And that was the reason for that.
So Cleanse FX is...
Cleanse FX was one of those real simple names that I came up with because the results is pretty well planned. I'll tell you a really amusing story. I had a truck driver that had problems in that direction. He needed to clean his colon out. And so I said, not knowing that he was a truck driver, I told him, take a double dose of Cleanse FX Friday night, Saturday morning, Saturday night, and then rest on Sunday. And that's usually the routine I do. But he drove that weekend and he was not happy with me.
Trifala, man. Trifala.
So now I always ask what they plan to do during the weekend.
Yeah, there's a boom there.
It works.
Trifala has been used for a long time.
So any other questions you guys want to do, or do you want to do point 2 in a couple of weeks?
Point 2 would be great, but on this is, I got to just say, wow, for our people, for the YouTube, for this existing on there forever and being able to cut this up too and cover all these different products. I'm super glad that we did this. Super grateful to you, Richard Renton. I have one last question. I guess it's just, I have lots of questions, but one that could be done fairly easily. Actually, if you forgive me, I could throw 2 at you. I could just throw 2 at you. Number 1, how the heck do you get so many antioxidants into Tangy Tangerine tablets? 40,000 ORAC in one capsule just seems unbelievable and unmatched. Number 2, the OsteoFX formula. There's a product at Costco. I know quality matters. Okay, so we've already got that. We've got the quality. But there's a product at Costco that has almost the exact same label, tricalcium phosphate and so on. I don't think it has the boron and the strontium, but it's almost the same label. And I've seen lots of people, cheap out and be like, well, I've learned about tricalcium phosphate. I'm going to try and take this. And it didn't work. It didn't do anything. Either they didn't get out of the pain or the pain came back, right? They got rid of the pain with the OsteoFX, and then the Costco version didn't work. Could you comment on that? What's the difference? What makes OsteoFX special? Because, by the way, if you don't know my story, I was in pain for 25 years. I grew up in pain. I was born in pain. I lived in pain. OsteoFX got me out of pain in 1 week, 6 days, actually. I had 6 sample packs. 6 sample packs removed my pain basically permanently. My twitching and cramping and all this stuff. So I consider it the most important product that we have, basically the most important thing that we bring to the table. That might just be my personal bias, but I'd love for you to comment on the differences between the quality of OsteoFX, the formula specifically, and compared to other products, and why the label doesn't tell the whole story, although you've already touched on that. And yeah, how the heck do we get so many antioxidants into the Tangy Tangerine tablets? How is that even possible?
Okay, so let's deal with osteo first. It's kind of like the MSM comment that I make. I can get tricalcium phosphate from China for $2 something a kilo, or I can get the stuff that has all the research behind it that's made in the United States in this particular case that costs 6 to 7 times more than that. And so that's the route we go. It's the same thing with every ingredient that's in that product. Can I bring it all in from China and make it very inexpensive out of China? Yes. And I'm not saying that's what Costco does, but I know some of the manufacturers in Costco, and Costco pushes price points so hard that the manufacturers are forced to cut corners to try to make a product that will fit Costco's desires and a price point and still stay in business. And so, if the Kirkland line is there, it doesn't cost much, but it doesn't wow me. There's very few products that I'll buy at Kirkland. I love CoQ10. There's a version of CoQ10 that comes out of Japan that Costco sells. And so I may pick that up just to boost up my CoQ10 because I like it in very large amounts, and we don't have that product because of cost. So I'll do that. And so basically I'm going to say is, where do you get the raw ingredients? How can you cut corners to make the product cheaper? Is it worth cutting corners to make the product cheaper? That answers the osteo question. The ORAC score is back to the mushrooms. And so you can have, I can take a mushroom, I can ground it up and dry it out and put it in a product. That's going to have a set ORAC score, and it's going to be lower. Then I can take mushrooms and I can make standardized extracts, which makes it very, very consistent and also raises it. Then I can make 15 to 25 times strength standardized extracts, which makes the ORAC score shoot through the roof. And so the trick on that is literally the mushrooms are in it, and it's a standardized extract of, I think the smallest one is 15 and the highest one is 50 times a standardized extract. And in doing that, I can keep the tablet the size it is and keep the ORAC score higher. Now, if it was me, I wouldn't have put that score there. That was the first score that we got. I would probably cut it back by 25% because I don't want someone down the road take a product and test it 3 weeks before shelf life is over and say the ORAC score isn't as strong as you say it is, because ORAC scores, the older the product, they diminish and go down. Same thing with probiotics. I will tell you really quickly on one thing on probiotics is the FDA has changed their opinion on probiotics. We used to be able to tell what the strength of a probiotic is at time of manufacturing. They have now said that we have to, and the transition is going to be over the next 3 years, but we're going to have to put there at time of expiration. So that's going to, people are going to look at the product and all of a sudden we're going to put a different number there and it's going to be half, maybe 40% of what it was. And they're going to think we cheapened the product. We didn't. It's just the guidelines of the FDA have changed the standard. The other thing too is that the companies that use live probiotics that you have to keep in a refrigerator rather than a standardized probiotic are even going to get hit more. And I have a company that I really like. Live Earth Products. I wouldn't mind doing business with them, but they have some cultures that are 100 billion per capsule, and it's a little tiny capsule. And you kind of wonder how can they do that number? Well, that their practices are drastically going to change when they implement the new FDA guidelines, because that's at time of manufacturing. And if they keep their 3-year shelf life, I lay a bet it's going to drop down to about 150,000 from 1 billion.
Wow.
150 million from 1 billion. It'll drop down to almost 10% the strength. So I'll tell you that so that you can train people and explain people. If all of a sudden your probiotic doesn't, on the label, doesn't look as strong, it's probably the exact same probiotic you've been taking. It's just the change of the FDA guidelines. Bless their hearts.
Yeah, key info right there. So Richard Renton, thank you for your time today. I mean, we all heard of the Terminator, but now we know the formulator.
I appreciate you guys, and I'd be happy to do this again. And then if you want, you can always fire me an email and say, who do you think would be best talking about this subject? And I'll point you in a great direction.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Be well, be healthy, everybody.
It's informative.
Thank you.
My newest book, Everything You Should Know About Healthy Blood Sugar, goes into a lot of detail about one of the most complicated things we get asked about, which is healthy blood sugar. This covers all of the blood sugar problems you know about, including type 1 and type 2 diabetes, and other problems you might not know were blood sugar problems, including behavioral problems, sleep problems, and cardiovascular problems. This book also goes into a lot of detail on digestion and how primitive people and animals actually acquire the nutrients that they need for healthy blood sugar in their natural environment. And definitely check out my book, Fake Diseases. It covers all of the major topics that come up, like birth defects, blood sugar problems, bone and joint problems, cancer, autoimmune problems, and more. And it's on Amazon for just $9.99. Definitely get yourself a copy of Dr. Wallach's cookbook. This is basically a textbook about how to cook without the bad foods, particularly oil and gluten. This is 300 pages stuffed full of recipes without the bad foods that they're usually made from. And of course, make sure to check out our food page, Notice Foods, that's on YouTube, and at Notice Foods on Instagram. We have a lot of content up there teaching you how to cook without the bad foods that Dr. Wallach describes
and Dr. Glidden's 12 Bad Foods, all of that, all of the rules that you need to know. And we have experienced chefs and bakers who will answer the questions in those inboxes. And I've also published a book in response to some of Dr. Wallach's criticisms, including the major articles that have been written against him on the internet. So if you are a Dr. Wallach fan or a Youngevity distributor, I definitely recommend having this book in your toolkit. And all of my books, audiobooks, and links are available on my website, noticebooks.org.